Okay. And today is the 12th of October. It's been a bit of a wild roller coaster ride in the last few weeks since we've been together for class. So I just want to kind of name a little bit of context of where we are in the world right now. We are in the wake of two big hurricanes, one that hit North Carolina, Helene, one in Florida, Milton. We are in the kind of global wake of a lot of world events, ongoing conflicts, turmoils, wars, uh, right? We're in a year anniversary phase of October 7th, which has been rattling a lot of nervous systems. And there is just so much collective suffering and grief. I have a title for today's class. It is called Tenderness in the Turmoil. Tenderness in the Turmoil. So, shall we find some of that together? And the honestly, there are just not enough words, but I'm going to try and give some words to ground us before we go into our physical practice. I also want to name that this practice is going to be cross-posted on the Light Movement resource listserv, and so grateful to Amy Pickett-Williams for offering that for our community as well. And I think what is maybe top of mind for me is that with all that's going on, we might have temporary rounds of just wanting to retreat from it all and pull back and, like just take care of our tender hearts. And that is very valid and very worthy. And still, there is this need at some point or another to show back up into the world, to, in a sense, show up no matter how dark it is out there, how scary it is. And, I often think of the words of Clarissa Pinkola Estes when she speaks about despair, and she really reminds us that it's not a time to succumb to despair. She says, when despair comes and it pulls up a chair to my table, I don't let it eat from my plate. Right? But we have ways of honoring, respecting, tenderly holding ourselves and each other when waves of that show up. I did pick a card from the post-traumatic growth guidebook or from the post-traumatic growth deck, this way. And the card that I picked for today is called A Healing Crisis. A healing crisis. And it's a image of a rather stormy sky over the neighborhood lake that I walk to. And I'll read you the words that are in the guidebook that accompanies this. When any system has been out of balance for a long period of time, it is common, to feel powerless, helpless, or numb. This is true about the physical body and of more complex systems such as families, corporations, countries, or ecosystems. Initially, a process of awakening can feel terrible. You might want to retreat and shut down again. But wait, this just might be a healing crisis, a temporary worsening of symptoms that arises as you go through the healing process. When you come out of numbness, and you will, you increase your awareness of how much pain is actually there. Now stay the course. It is time to heal. What is essential for me about coming together in community spaces, whether that is in person, whether that is through technology, is to know that we're not walking this journey alone. When those waves of really intense feelings do come to the surface, that we can, in a sense, lean into the fabric of a community that will meet tenderness together and will open our hearts to that tenderness, even in the midst of this kind of turmoil. So, talking with friends who've been impacted by these storms, I also continue to hear about this phenomenal coming together of community. It has been extraordinary. And I remember this so well when we had floods in Boulder, Colorado back in 2013. Our house flooded, every house on our street flooded. And we showed up with shared dumpsters and carried stuff out of each other's homes. And we shared our fans and our wetbacks. And we just went from house to house, helping each other. That's what stands out for me more than anything else, as I remember back to that time, more than the loss of the physical items that we did lose or the remodel that we had to do in our house, which we did. This experience of coming together, of showing up in our best selves to bring water, to bring food, to clear the mud, to care for each other's children, this is how we shine. As Rumi says, if everything around seems dark, look again. You may be the light. Today's physical yoga practice is going to be an oscillating practice, meaning that we're going to have short bursts of kind of cardiovascular challenge purposefully, just to move some of that stress and cortisol out of your system, with restorative resets and recovery phases. So we're gonna, Julie, we're gonna shake some stuff out. Exactly. So we're gonna get some movement with active recovery rest phases. And I'm hoping that it will help you come away with a greater capacity to stand in the storms of this world with an open heart. There's a quote that I want to share, and I'll do my best to share it, but I was listening to an interview with Dan Siegel last week, and it really touched me. And he's kind of the founder of the movement of interpersonal neurobiology, and he spoke about all of the threats that our nervous systems are fielding and navigating in the world around us. And that if we can make one small change, which is to hold those threats as challenges versus threats, that we can actually think of a challenge and how can I rise to meet that challenge? What resources do I need to navigate that challenge? Versus the concept of threat puts us into either I need to flee from it or I need to defensively protect myself from it. And it reduces the creative responsiveness that we need in the context of challenge. So perhaps those words ring for you as well. I'll offer one more. Like I said, aren't enough words, but I came up with a lot of them. But let them wash through, and we'll get to movement in a moment. I want to offer kind of one more frame and then a poem. The frame is a kind of Buddhist frame called the Five Remembrances. The Five Remembrances are basically kind of tenets that help us to appreciate the life that we're given, maybe not always the life that we wanted. And the first is that there is really no way to escape growing old. There is no way to escape the inevitability of illness. There is no way to escape the inevitability that we all will die. There is no way to escape the inevitability that we will lose all that we own, all that is dear to us, and everyone that we love. All right, there's a fifth, and this is important because if we just stick with those four, despair shows up and wants to eat from our plate. The fifth is the only thing that I really, truly own that is lasting even beyond me are my actions. My actions are my only true belongings. I actually can't escape the consequences of my actions, and my actions are the legacy that I leave behind. So when we can take some sense of agency around what I do in the face of despair or turmoil, and can I be a source of goodness in this world? Can my actions actually be of benefit? There's some agency that we can walk forward with. Okay, we'll let that one sift through. And a poem. And a poem. This poem is by Emery Hall. You can listen to it on Spotify while she reads it, and her husband, Trevor Hall, plays music to it, and it's quite a lovely listen. It's called Come Sit by My Garden. Let my gardens speak for me when I'm gone. Let them speak in colored whispers of all the beauty I have seen and felt and lived. Let them speak of how much death had to find me, how many hard seasons it took to make me a living, breathing thing. Let them speak of my seasons of growth and abundance, but let them also tell of my seasons of loss and decay. Let the soft, wet earth be a reminder of hardness that didn't win, of sadness that didn't calcify, of surrender that triumphed over resistance. And let the glorious, fragrant blooms speak of my life and its greatest lesson, that the beauty we make never dies. Come, sit by my garden. All right. So take a moment just to be with whatever this initial share brought to the surface for you. Emotions, sensations, that tenderness perhaps. And as you tune into your body, just ask yourself, might it be helpful to place your hands on your very own body in any way that might be beneficial for you? Maybe it's over your heart, maybe it's holding your head, maybe it's holding front and back of your skull, just allowing yourself, and you can move your hands around until you find the spot that feels just right. Maybe it's a hug. And with this connection, this gentle holding of yourself, making perhaps an intention, finding your why, if it's words or simply just a heartfelt longing, arriving to your practice. And then continuing to work with this contact of hands, perhaps some havening touch, sweeping fingers or palms from center of forehead out towards your temples. across your cheekbones from the bridge of your nose toward your ears. It can even feel good just to greet your scalp, your hairline. Maybe your ears want a little bit of love. Rolling ear lobes, maybe the tragus, a little squeeze. And I love fingers like V's and fronts and backs of the ears, a little massage of the hinge of your jaw as well. And you might open and close your jaw. Maybe a sound. And then hands to shoulders, down to elbows, a little havening touch. And hands over your heart center in a little circular movement in the clockwise direction. So you'll move up the right side and down the left, just connecting to any tenderness around your heart, knowing that all of you is welcome here. And then allowing your hands to rest. Take as long as you'd like right here. And when you're ready, I'll invite you to transition to your mat into child's pose. Arriving in your child's pose and allowing yourself to feel a connection to the earth beneath you. Can you sense some quality of that which is holding you? That which in some way in this moment is unmoving and provides a sense of stability, steadiness. From your child's pose, I invite you to walk your hands off to one side. Doesn't matter which side, we're going to do both. It's walking your hands to one side, let your head rest again or just drape, and then breathing into the opposite side body. And then we'll find side two, walking across, allowing yourself to feel what this side holds for you. And then coming back through to center. And I invite you to come up to sitting either in rock pose. Rock pose will be sitting here on your heels. If that's too much for your knees, you can sit on a block, you can sit cross-legged, really make this comfortable for you, supportive for you. We'll be here for a little bit. So if at any point you decide that you've had enough of sitting in this shape, then switch it out. And the first practice that we'll do from this shape is going to be a stair step breath. I actually learned this from Amy Weintraub. And it's a 4-part inhale. And she invites you to think of riding the escalator or the elevator down. You just take a nice smooth exhale. And it will kind of look and sound like this. Inhale and exhale. You can exhale through your nose or through your mouth. I'm showing the 4-part breath with my hands, but you don't need to do the hand movements if you don't want. One more. And then allow yourself to receive that. Just notice what that breath practice surfaced for you, how it changes energy, emotion, sensation. And either resting in stillness or beginning to take this into just a little bit of a free form movement. Maybe you stay in this shape, just allowing yourself to move your spine. Maybe you're stretching a little side to side. If you need a break from being on your feet, you can come into table and just find a few breaths here. Tabletop. Moving in and out. And we'll have another movement snack like that in a moment. I'll invite you to come back to seated either on your heels or again, make this comfortable for you. From here, I'll invite you to take some spinal movements, a seated cat-cow. Hands can rest onto your thighs, and the breath here is inhale, exhale. Inhale forward, exhale back. Good. Inhale to center, long spine. Maybe a brief hold at the top. And then exhale, let it go. And this time I will guide you into just a little bit side to side. Very purposefully, just greeting each side body. What is it holding for you today? Let it feel good. And then back to center. This next one we visited last week. We'll visit again here, or last class, I should say. So it might be familiar for those of you that have practiced with me before. We're going to imagine we're holding a tray in our palms. And this time we're going to take it slightly different. We're going to really slice across midline, right at the level of your solar plexus. And you can take this slow You're exhaling with each slice. Or you might take this more rapidly. A little bit like a breath of fire here. And then come back to center, inhale. And exhale, let it go. Beautiful. Let yourself recalibrate, integrate. Like I mentioned earlier, we're doing some energizing, activating breaths and postures with phases of active recovery. So take that recovery, that rest. Really good for building what we call vagal efficiency, this ability for your vagus nerve to help you navigate the inevitable stresses of life and come back into recovery. And we practice that in the safety of your yoga mat, your yoga space. Next breath practice. And again, if it's too much sitting on your heels, switch it out. We'll do a Kapalabhati, again, a short, similar, but without the movement. And we're going to draw the navel back on the exhale. So it'll look and sound like finding your own pace, listening to your rhythm, and we'll go together. Inhale here. And exhale. This time, active recovery goes back into some free form movement. I'll invite you to come out into a cat-cow and just allow yourself to move in any way that supports you to integrate. Maybe some circular movements. Maybe that movement is really right back into child's pose and resting. Maybe it's a cat-cow in this shape. Beautiful. And I'll do a little guided movement here. This one again is going to have a bit more of an active quality to it. You can always skip anything that I'm suggesting. If it's not right for you, you can slow it down and make everything really about listening to you and your body. This practice, this next one is a side to side movement. So you're going to C curve your spine. Head and tail are going in the same direction. So you're C curving one way and the other way. And your opposite foot's going to move. So when I C curve my spine to the left, my right foot comes across. We come through center, C curve to the right, left foot comes across. And I like to peek back and take a little look at my toe. The inhale is through center, exhale to each side, and you can take this slow, or you can speed it up. Inhale through center, and exhale, let that go. And we'll take a more restful shape now. reaching your right arm up above, maybe roll out your wrist one direction and the other. And then sweep your arm under your body and then let yourself come into a resting twist. Side of your head, your temple to the floor. Left hand can come long, stay bent, or maybe drape across your back. Let the swirling settle, arriving in gravity, softening tension. And it's the most subtle inversion with head below hips, letting your heart be replenished and nourished. And then pressing into your left hand, and we come up and out, lifting through right arm, and back to the earth for side two. This time it's the left arm that lifts. You can rotate around your wrist, each direction. And then under your body and through, and find the shape that works for you. Gently, lovingly returning yourself back to center. Maybe you open the left side one more time before placing both hands down on the mat. And then from here, I'm going to invite you to come all the way forward onto your belly. In this first belly down pose, I'm going to invite you to come into Sphinx, which means that you're going to bring your forearms down, kind of like a number 11 here in front of you. And I personally like to press into my knees just a little bit to lift my hips, lengthen my low back, and then resettle down. You can draw your forearms back towards your hips, drawing your heart forward. If it creates discomfort in the low back, again, you can re-lengthen here, press into knees, and then settle it down again. Just exploring how you can allow this shape to feel good and supportive. Maybe you wiggle your hips a little side to side. I like that one too. And then we're going to turn this into an active shape. This first variation of the active shape is to curl your toes under and to press your toes and knees into the floor. Now, once again, this is going to lift your hips off the floor as you press your knees down and draw your knees toward your forearms. Forearms continue to press downward, and what you might notice in this somewhat awkward shape is that you begin to shake a little bit. Let the shaking happen. Shaking through the low belly, the psoas, you'll feel it in your hips, maybe your legs. The more you draw your knees toward your arms and press your elbows back toward the knees, pressing downward. And then go ahead and let it go. This time open your elbows wide and soften into crocodile. Hands stacked, forehead resting. Maybe once again you wiggle your hips side to side. I like to turn toes out in crocodile and feet wide. And then coming back to center, back into your Sphinx base with forearms down. This time, curling your toes under once again, and maybe you bring your palms together, facing each other, interlacing your hands. So if you look down, now you've got a little triangle base in your forearms. As you curl the toes under, you can do the same thing we did before, which is keep knees down and just lift the hips. You might choose to lift your knees as well, and now you're in a forearm plank. And just finding your breath here, finding the stability in the strengthening pose. Once again, this is a challenge, and you always have choice. At least in this moment, you have choice. Do you want to engage with this challenge, or is it too much? So feeling that sense of greeting the challenge, whatever version you're taking, and then maybe adding on, if you want, walking your feet just 2 footprints or so forward. You come into a variation of dolphin, and then walking your feet back into forearm plank. Again, walking your feet forward, lifting your hips. You can keep your knees bent. We're not quite warmed up back there. And then walking your feet back, forearm plank. One more time. Walking your feet forward, walking your feet back. A brief pause before lowering your knees, your hips, widening through your forearms again into Sphinx. And then this time, opening your elbows wide to free your hands and press back into Child's one more time. Now, you might feel some warmth or even a little bit of accumulated tension in the low back. That's okay. It's going to pass. It's going to respond to this pause and this breath. You can actually send your breath right down into the kidney area, into the low spine. Exhale, letting something go. And then when you feel ready, if you feel ready to move forward, coming back through a tabletop and finding just a few free breaths here. From your tabletop, I'm going to invite you to send your left leg back and give it a few pulses, just pulsing through the calf, through the heel. And then with your left leg back, walking your hands to the left side. They might come right off your mat. And then another chance just in a different home base to find some movement, maybe forward and back. Maybe wiggling your hips a little, circular movements. Maybe leaning further toward your left leg. And then not there too long, just coming straight back around to table and the opposite side. A few pulses. And then walking around to the right. And just greeting your right leg, hamstring, inner thigh. And then back around to the front for table. This time in table, I'm going to invite you to keep your hands below your shoulders, knee below hips, curl your toes under and hover your knees. So we're in a little hovering cat Okay, and just allow yourself to feel that same quality of drawing the belly in that we found in that forearm plank. The knee down, forearm plank, just feeling that core support here. And then pressing with your arms back, knees stay bent as you are moving toward a downward dog, lengthening through the spine, and then gently allowing yourself to greet your legs. Now, you might walk yourself a little wider and then begin to just walk it out, one heel and the other, or any other movements that help you greet your first downward dog. Eventually, I'll invite you to gaze forward and walk forward, feet towards hands. And then as you find this first forward fold, explore what supports you. So you can choose a rag doll, maybe with hands to opposite elbow creases. Personally, I love my hands on the earth. It gives a little bit more stability with 4 points of contact on the earth. Maybe you nod your head yes, shake it no, move your jaw around, scrunch your face, give a sound, ah. Let something go. Whew. Like it's just going to roll off your shoulders, come out through the top of your head. Ah, ah, oh. And for our transition to standing, I'll invite you with feet hip widths apart to find a deep bend in your knees. So we're going to find a halfway lift here with the spine. Now you can keep your hands on your thighs here for extra support. But even with that, I want you to draw your navel toward your spine. So we're still activating that creative core. And then maybe you send your arms back. You can even rotate them outward so your thumbs lift up. Now you're going to continue to breathe, sensing the core. And I want you to imagine that you're just going to press your heels away from each other, like you could rip your mat into two. Now this is a great place to stay, or maybe you send your arms out in front of you, changing the lever of the shape. Continuing to breathe. And then slowly pressing down into your feet to lift all the way up to standing. Whew. And perhaps palm over your heart and just sensing your aliveness, your experience of your very own heartbeat. The power of that right there in you, helping you navigate the turmoil, staying open-hearted, feeling that connection to your inner strength. And we'll find a little bit of movement here from standing. I'm going to invite you to find either with your toes down a little bit of rotation around your ankle in one way or the other, or in balance, just rotating your foot in one way or the other. If you are choosing balance, totally legit to take yourself to something that supports that. Top of a chair, wall, a windowsill. And then we're going to take that movement around the knee. Now, if you're preferring 2 feet on the floor, you're going to do one ankle and then the other, and then you're going to take your knee movements together. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and rotate shin in one direction and the other. Of course, you can also do this seated in a chair. And then go ahead and find some larger movements of your leg around your hip. In one direction and the other way. Good balance practice. Nice. And then let's switch it out. So your variation, maybe you're rolling around the ankle, maybe your ankle is going in the air. Foot one way and the other way. And your shin. And the other way. And your knee around your hip. Both directions. And then stepping wide and some wide hip circles. In each direction. And then from here, a little bit of a catch the spinal wave, okay? So you can just play a little bit with moving your spine, moving your tailbone, and play with where you initiate this movement from, whether that's tucking tail and letting that wave move upward. Maybe it's initiating from the chest or the shoulders. Second spinal wave is the sidewinder. Let yourself feel a little playful, like a snake here. Hips into the spine, the shoulders. I like to think of those, kind of wavy things that the used car salesmen have outside to catch your attention, right? Be one of those. Wiggle it out. It doesn't have to look any particular way. Good. And then our next spinal movement is going to be a qigong twist here. Let yourself go side to side. Let your head turn, your gaze, your arms get to just go for the ride. Maybe they make contact with the kidney area, the adrenal area in the back of your body. Letting go of some of this stress. Whew, that cortisol that's been spiking. For those of you that have been living through some of these direct interface with challenge. Whew. And then letting that slow down. And once again, greet yourself in a little bit of stillness, maybe hands over your heart, sensing your heartbeat, a phase of receptivity and active recovery from the movement. Beautiful. I'll invite you to come toward the front of your mat. And we'll find a sun salutation together. Inhale, sweeping your arms up. Exhale to fold. Inhale for a halfway lift. And exhale to plant your hands. Inhale to step back to high plank. And exhale, knees, chest, chin to the earth. Inhale, finding a cobra, and we'll do several of these. Exhale to lower. And you are at choice of how much weight in your hands, how much lift of your spine. Following your rhythm of breath and movement, playing with the placement of your hands. And then when you're ready, pressing back through table. Maybe you even visit a little child's pose before making your way to downward facing dog. Finding your breath. Feeling the points of contact you have with the earth. And then when you're ready, making your way to the front of the mat. Now you can step there, you can hop, pounce, however you want to arrive there. When you do, finding a halfway lift, inhale. Exhale to fold. Inhale, and we'll repeat, drawing arms up overhead. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale, hands plant. Inhale, stepping back to plank. And exhale either to the floor or halfway down. Inhale, cobra or upward facing dog. And exhale your way to downward facing dog. From your downward facing dog, I'm going to invite a little bit more of an active flow. So if you need to pause for a second, pause seated, pause in child's pose. We're going to go into one of those kind of cardio bursts, cardiovascular challenge. So ask yourself, is this really what I need right now? It's short, it's not too long. And if you're ready to come for the ride, or if you're resting in child's pose, both are completely valid. Let's go ahead and meet in downward dog if you're coming. And then just begin to walk out your heels, bending one knee and the other, and it's a little more rapid. You can take your breath with it. Okay, next variation here is lift both heels and drop heels to one side. You're going to bend your knees. You come through center, heels lift. Exhale, heels drop, bend your knees. Your hips are going side to side. Knees are going side to side. Heels are going side to side. Inhale through center, exhale to the side. Find your pace and rhythm. Okay, and third one here, and then we take a break. Bending both knees to center. Inhale, lift your leg. Exhale, bend. Inhale, opposite leg, and bend. And then go ahead and lower your knees, either sitting back in rock pose or in child's pose, and just allowing yourself to receive the experience. Maybe it's a moment for a sip of water. Maybe it's your hands over your heart, feeling your elevated heart rate. And then slowing down your breath, which will assist with that recovery phase. Beautiful. Okay, so from here, I'll invite you to make your way back to downward dog if you're coming into the next segment. We have another standing flow. See if that feels right for you right now. From downward dog, allowing yourself to gaze forward, walk, step, pounce there. Finding a halfway lift on an inhale. Exhale to fold. And then inhale to standing. And exhale to Utkatasana. Now for this one, I will bring my feet together, but you can stay hips width apart. See what feels right for you. And then sitting nice and low with the hips. Inhale, lifting through your arms. And then we're going to move the arms here. Exhale, sweep them back, and inhale to lift. Beautiful place to move some energy, to let something go that's not serving you. Maybe a sound with your breath. Slowing it down, sending your arms back, pausing here for a moment. One more added challenge if you'd like, lift your heels. Use your gaze for balance. And then lowering your heels. We're going to bring our legs with us as the arms lift, left leg comes with. And exhale, leg descends. Inhale, right foot this time. And exhale. Inhale left, we call these parachutes. And descend. Inhale right. And descend. Inhale to the left. And exhale, this time we're going to send your left leg back behind you, trusting the unknown, the unseen, and allowing your toes to touch down. We're going to come up into crescent and then lift and lower here, finding your way in. And then maybe a brief pause and stillness. Inhaling here. And exhale to open up to warrior two. Another place to play with movement. Maybe you come in and out of the lunge. Before finding your depth and maybe staying there for a few breaths. And then inhale, reaching away from your front bent leg. And exhale, we'll take a variation of an extended side angle. So forearm onto thigh. And for this one, I'll invite you to take your left arm back behind you, and your thumb again is going to rotate upward. So your palm is opening to the ceiling. Now, even as we have this strength in the lower body, and you can really draw the legs toward each other, feel like you're going to buckle your mat between your feet. Go ahead then and allow your hands to keep the heart open in the midst of the intensity, yeah? Coming to your breath. And then let's go ahead and lift up 5-pointed star. Shake out your hips if you'd like. And then exhale, we'll take traditional goddess here. And we'll do goddess with lion's breath, a personal favorite of mine. So go ahead and come on down. And we're going to inhale, then exhale. Tongue sticks out, eyes can cross, make claws with your hands. Inhale, exhale, and inhale. Let it be fierce. Well done. Inhale, 5-pointed star. And exhale, we're going to turn towards the back of your mat. This time, preparing for Trikonasana triangle. So allowing yourself to kind of open up through the arms, maybe reaching long, long, long before rotating your hands into support. Really lovely to use a block or your shin. Gaze can go up, forward, or down, whatever supports you here. Maybe a nice micro bend in your left knee. And then slowly lifting back up, rebending now through left leg and windmilling down, making your way to downward facing dog. Maybe a vinyasa, maybe you skip it. And arriving in downward dog, just sensing and feeling. Do you need to rest between sides? If so, honor that. When you feel ready, we'll make our way to the front of the mat once again. So you can bend your knees, hop, pounce, walk, saunter. And then finding a halfway lift and fold. And coming up into Utkatasana, bending your knees, sweeping your arms, and exhale back into drinking bird. This time it's right leg that's going to come into your parachutes. Arms and leg move together. Exhale down. Left leg. It's rhythmic, paced. I often think of Karate Kid in this one. Wax on, wax off. Good. This time we're going to take that right leg up and back behind, leaning into that which we cannot see, but trusting that the ground is there, taking your feet down, your toes down, and then as we lift up here, a few breaths to come in and out of your crescent lunge. Beautiful. And then maybe pause for a breath or two. Before opening it up to warrior two. And another opportunity to move with the breath. Settling in, arriving. Maybe recentering your mind on your intention. Bringing your mind back to your heart. Reaching away. And on an exhale, extended side angle. We're going to find that variation with the right arm back, turning the palm upward, opening through your heart, and then really feel that strength and intensity in the legs. It's there for you. Maybe feeling like you're going to drag your feet together, buckle the mat up, and yet here's that open heart. And then letting your right hand help bring you all the way up. 5-pointed star. And you can shift your hips a little. And this time as we come into a horse squat, a deepened squat here, I'm going to invite us into what we call the polarity twist. Really lovely integration side to side. Inhale at center and exhale, one shoulder dips. Inhale and exhale the other way. One more time each side. Beautiful. Inhaling last time through our 5-pointed star. And then exhale towards the front of your mat, right foot in front, this time for triangle, Trikonasana, reaching away first. And then long reach through straight arms, long arms, finding shin floor block, some support underneath you, maybe a little micro bend in right knee. And choose a spot for your gaze that lets your jaw, neck, eyes receive support, be soft enough. So we're taking some of the strain out. Slowly lifting back up. Exhale to bend your knee and windmill all the way down to the earth, stepping right foot back to meet the left. And this time, resting shape option is Anahatasana, or heart chakra pose, the heart opening pose. A beautiful shape for opening the back side of the heart. It's like a puppy dog shape, and sometimes it's referred to that way. The hips stay stacked on your knees. You can walk your upper body forward and then allowing your forehead to rest. You can let your elbows, forearms rest if that feels comfortable. Maybe you're lifting up onto fingertips. That might feel a little more supportive. And then sending your breath into the back of your heart. And then slowly settling yourself back either into child's pose or seated in rock pose. So I had a request. I don't always get requests, but I had a request to do an inversion for today. So I'm going to do an inversion for today, and I'm going to guide you through Pincha Mayurasana, or forearm stand. And if you are hearing this and going, well, no, thank you, that's not for me. Option 2 is to take a block, go onto your back, and give yourself the most gentle inversion of legs up the wall, or you can literally take yourself to a wall and take legs up the wall that way. For those of you that are looking for the challenge of an active inversion, we've been preparing for it through that opening of the chest, through the forearm stand, and through that Anahatasana. And if you want to watch first, you are welcome to watch first. Personally, I love a block that is going to help space the hands and keep them from sliding together. You take your hands in L's, slide them to the outside of the block, placing your forearms, your elbows down, and then checking that your forearms are in that number 11. And then allowing yourself to press into the feet, coming into that dolphin shape that we found earlier. We're more warmed up for it this time, and maybe you walk yourself even a little closer. This is a great challenge shape, and it's a great place to stay. For those of you that are wanting more, lifting one leg, and then maybe a few hops. Just experimenting. I have a wall on the other side of me. Maybe you want to do that with a wall. Maybe you hop yourself up into balance. Allowing yourself to find any variation. And then finding your breath there. Maybe your gaze is down toward the floor. Maybe it's toward the wall behind you or in front of you, however you think about it. Staying as long as it supports you, and then coming down gently and resting. And if you are in legs up the wall, you can just stay there. If you were just in another inversion, maybe resting in child's pose or resting in seated rock. Now, wherever you are, if you would like to come into one last round of guided shapes, I am going to take us into pigeon. So if you are legs up the wall, you might want to come back down. Give yourself a moment to recalibrate. And then I'll guide us into pigeon through downward dog. But if you want to skip the down dog and just find your way in, whatever supports you, we're taking right leg forward, right knee towards right wrist. And what I will offer for today is, before we go into resting pigeon, here's our last little bits of challenge. I'm going to invite you to squeeze your legs together. Like, again, you're going to buckle the mat up in front of you. Your hips will lift. Back toes can be curled under. And then once again here, find that open heart by sending your arms back and turning your palms upward. A few breaths. Active pigeon. Heart opening. Challenge shape. And then when you're ready, finding your way forward into a resting shape. And again, I like to make my way in slowly. I like to rock a little side to side, even twisting a little to the right, breathing into the left psoas and hip flexor before coming down. And your variation here of your resting pigeon. Forehead to hands, to the earth. Maybe you untuck that back toe. Beautiful. Just letting yourself feel that support of the earth beneath you once again. And very slowly pressing into your hands to send your weight into your right hip. And maybe you come forward, either sweeping your left leg around or just turning your hips to come into Janu Sirsasana, or one-legged seated forward fold. Now you can bend through your left knee and leg as much as you want, leaning forward, reaching, taking whatever is available. You can work with a long spine, you can work with a rounded spine. But perhaps in these final shapes, there's an opportunity to just go inward. Maybe eyes stay more closed. Your breath slows down. Maybe you can even sense that your breath can descend a little further into your body, softening diaphragm, abdominal muscles, even breathing down into the pelvic floor, around your tailbone, all of those places that can go into contraction when we're in the turmoil. Gently coming up and out of that forward fold, coming back around, and however you'd like to come into your side two, greeting the left side pigeon. And here's our very last active engagement of class, curling right toes under, squeezing legs toward each other, hips will lift, opening that heart, turning the palms open. Just a few breaths here. Before settling your fingertips, maybe you take that gentle twist to the left, breathing into the right psoas, hip flexor. And then settling into the earth. Once you arrive, it's a lovely place to sense whether there's still any unnecessary tension here. Maybe your jaw, your eyes, your tongue. Letting that go as is possible for you. Softening your throat and your shoulders, your back. The spaces around your heart. And then slowly lifting up enough to shift the weight into your left hip, and then rotating around into the preparation for a seated forward fold. And allowing yourself maybe to bend through that right knee and folding in whatever way serves you, whether that's bent knee, whether that's long leg, whether that's rounded spine or lengthened spine. And wherever you are, slowing down the breath again. Maybe eyes closed. Slowly, gently, in your timing, lifting back up. Now, maybe you go reverse on your mat, however you'd like to get to laying down on your back and checking in. Maybe drawing your knees in for a moment, circling your knees around your sacrum, maybe circling them each separately in opposite directions. And then check in with yourself as you hug your knees, coming into seed pose, bija, and checking in, are there any final movements that you need, or do you feel complete? Honoring whichever is true for you. And then when you feel ready, meeting in Shavasana, setting up your Shavasana just the way that you would set up any other shape, just mindfully checking in. Does it feel right? Are there any subtle changes? Shoulders, hips, legs, placement of your arms, maybe rotating your hands upward, a gesture of receiving. Once you find your place, scanning one last time through your body for any unnecessary tension around your eyes and forehead, around your jaw or tongue, your throat and chest, shoulders, arms letting go heavy into the earth, upper back, lower back, weighted and heavy, belly and hips. And then one last sweep through scan of your legs to your feet. And then even letting the scanning go, opening to simply receive your practice. As you rest here, I'd like to offer up the words of today's poem one last time. Come, sit by my garden. Let my gardens speak for me when I'm gone. Let them speak in colored whispers of all the beauty I have seen and felt and lived. Let them speak of how much death had to find me, how many hard seasons it took to make me a living, breathing thing. Let them speak of my seasons of growth and abundance, but let them also tell of my seasons of loss and decay. Let the soft, wet earth be a reminder of hardness that didn't win, of sadness that didn't calcify, of surrender that triumphed over resistance. And let the glorious, fragrant blooms speak of my life and its greatest lesson, that the beauty we make never dies. Come, sit by my garden. And you are, of course, welcome to stay in this resting shape for as long as it serves you. And if you feel called to and are ready to bring yourself up and out, gently wiggling your fingers, your toes, rotating hands around the wrists, feet around the ankles. Maybe you curl your knees in, roll to a fetal shape, slowly, gently pressing back up to sitting. And when you arrive, maybe one more time, palm to heart, palm over palm at your heart. Sensing and feeling what has changed in a relatively short amount of time. Honoring yourself for choosing to stay open in your heart, to find that tenderness in the midst of the turmoil. And that courageous heart in me bows to and honors the courageous heart in each of you. Namaste.